Hello, and welcome to Dicebucks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 32, a cadre of nobles find themselves dislocated and explore a new chancel. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hi, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Leorian Cathar, Baron of Tempo, who feels strangely at home.
Hello, I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Lyssa Crate of Lurenton, or what was Lurenton, Furious Queen, Dark Diva, blah blah blah.
I'm Des, and I'll be playing Romnet, the the undercover Duke of Murder, who totally didn't just play Clue.
For keeps.
A walking game of Clue, this one.
I suppose it's more that I cause games of Clue than that I play them, but...
I suppose sure. It's the epicenter of all Clue.
You play murder mystery dinners.
Yes, every dinner is a murder mystery dinner when...
So... Thank you, guys. We have a little bit of character stat growth to recap before we get to our episode recap. Robnet, I believe you were putting your Divine XP from last time to good use.
Yes, I am putting my point of Divine XP directly into Unblemished Guise, so that fewer Nobilis can actually tell that I'm a Nobilis unless I am playing Clue. Causing clue.
Cluing.
There we go. Cluing. What a genteel euphemism for the causing of murder.
My understanding is that in the UK, the game is called Cluedo, which gives us the opportunity to have Cluedoing as the verb.
Oof. Thanks, I hate it.
Cluedo so well. Cluedo like a pun on like
no.
Like play?
That Cluedo
Like
that you do so well.
There it is. That Cluedo that you do so well.
We are off to a rollicking start here.
We are.
I'm also going to roll lore.
Yes, you are going to roll lore. Good job.
And I'm going to get a pair of 3 and a pair of 5s, but that doesn't double anything out.
Yeah, you just have an especially shiny experience point on your mortal XP sheet this time.
I will note that
down. But are there any other character stat growths? That makes it sound like a medical condition. Are any other characters growing their stats?
I have a growth.
Please discuss your growth.
I was not intentionally waiting until you were taking a sip of your beverage there, Adam. I will have you know that before the session begins in earnest.
I did it to myself.
Later on it may be intentional, but for now it is not.
For now it's not. Absolutely. So I know in the past you've mentioned that when applying miracle points towards my secondary domain of darkness, they count towards twice as much.
No. So first off, I think you're talking about divine experience points, not miracle points.
Yes.
So for your secondary domain, each rank, instead of costing 3 divine XP, costs 1 divine XP. It is limited by the rank of your primary domain, but your primary domain is maxed out at 5. So, that's not much of a
4
factor.
miracle points will get you to the max. Well, 3, I suppose, since you started at 1.
Yeah, experience points. I'm glad I'm not the only one doing it. I have 1, so yes. I can actually go ahead and rank up darkness.
Correct. Yeah, you can. Okay. You can use that 1 point to get darkness up to what, 1?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah.
I guess that means you have to come up with a new title for what you are to darkness. I mean, I guess technically Baroness, but you've never felt particularly limited by the prescribed titles, which I applaud.
Yeah, it may stay Dark Diva because I think
Sure.
0 was technically pawn.
Yes. 0
As long as
is
we're
actually
here.
pawn. Yes.
So 3 to up a rank.
Uh-huh.
This is probably a discussion that is worth the listener hearing briefly. Leorian's domain is a 1 specifically because his powers are, for lack of a better term, timey-wimey. And we didn't want to violate causality too horribly.
Speak for
would
yourself.
It still? Well, sure.
says the demigod, who is a walking violation of causality.
Exactly. I may need assistance with this later. Once
I think I'm
you're
convinced.
aware.
So if I were, well, yeah, I'm thinking there would be some interesting possibilities if I were to up my domain to 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to make sure that was kosher within the limitations we've set for Leorian and the aforementioned timey-wiminess.
Yeah, we always had talked about you starting at 1, and I may soft cap you, just to kind of keep the messiness of the closing stretch of this campaign manageable for my tiny little mortal brain. But yes, for 3 of your 4 divine XP, you could rank up domain 1, and that would get you to 2. The sort of other thing that you could do with those currently is add miracle points 1-to-1.
Sure.
You already have a fair few for domain, but they're just, you've spent them.
Right. No, I'm let the listener know that I'm completely tapped of domain miracle points. I have 1 aspect miracle point. I have 3 realm miracle points. We've already started doing right at the last Trump type stuff.
I guess that would be the other thing that I would add is that having broken the seal on aspect, you had to start at aspect 0, and Lissa is still locked to aspect 0 because the improvements to her aspect are hoarded by Mavia. But either of you could, as could Romnet, start spending XP to improve aspect beyond 0. Just for Lissa, that would only apply to Mavia's character sheet.
Sure.
It would
given
be
where
really
I'm pretty
funny
sure we
if I
are,
ended up like high aspect, given Romnet's utter disinterest in using like his own physical force.
Right.
Not so ornamentally pretty would have to be the new turn of phrase, I believe.
Ornamentally omnipotent, yeah.
Ornamentally omnipotent is even better.
I think what
ornamental utility. There we go.
Exactly. There it is. Given where I'm pretty sure we are in today's episode, I think I'm going to wait until next time to make this choice, sort of based on how this plays out and what makes sense in character.
Sounds good to me. Any other expenditures before we move on?
I am considering some mortal expenditures.
Do tell.
Although I am looking now to see that I put the shiny experience in the wrong category. But
I'm picturing the number sparkle.
I mean, I put it on my sheet as, 6, 1 shiny.
Sure. I guess if it's like Pokemon, it's not even actually shiny. It's just a different color, right?
Yeah. But it turns out that I actually have 7 unspent mortal experience, and this is fine and good. Recall to me what the costs for upgrading a skill is. So it would be the amount of the new skill, is that correct?
Yes, the whatever the value is becoming is the cost. If you are improving a die in a pool to an expert die, that's 1 experience.
Right,
if you're improving an expert
5.
die to a master die, that's 5. Yeah. And then stats are 10 each, regardless of what number it's going to.
Adding a die to each of Perform Dance and Weapon Blades. Yes, 1 to each of Weapon and Perform.
Finally, a little lethality on this character
excellent
sheet.
Hey now. I just have to point.
Yeah, I was going to say that does bring the weapon pool here to 4 dice, but also as long as you are targeting mortals, you could pretty much, just go and, cause violence to happen. So that probably does it for our experience expenditure extravaganza. which means that up next is our summary, courtesy of Romnet.
So, we began, I began, with a visit to check in on Chris' tier and let him know that I was, in fact, watching him quite closely. It was not an amicable conversation, but it had the appropriate effect, and the old man gave a sufficient and acceptable report, and understood that I would be checking back in. When we awoke in the morning, there was daylight, and there was sand, and there was a figure coming over the dunes. I sharpened my sight to see that it was, in fact, not only a person, but also a very large bat. I did not convey this to the others. It is perhaps unsporting, but they would have asked how I knew. And nobody likes questions. So we had breakfast with a merchant named Fewa and her adorable little fennec fox named Puff. He was quite friendly, or at least cautiously open to my petting him. Leorian took this as a personal insult that Puff liked me better than him. Alas. And at some point, Leorian and Lissa went off to apparently yell at the sand, which is made up of particulate teenagers. There was minimal progress made in convincing the sand to retreat or go away or revert to the dirt that it ought to be. And during that time, they met the figures that I had seen in the distance. A man named Thoralda and a bat named Tokyo, each nobilis in the service of heretofore unknown divinities, Marine of the Forge and Zalaban of the Deep Earth. They let on to my compatriots that they were looking for, or after, or about Fewa without directly saying so, or directly identifying her. Lissa took the opportunity to mentally or divinely prod Fewa that she perhaps ought to be going before that portion of the party returned to the inn for what remained of breakfast. So Lissa did. Not Lissa, Fewa. I was introduced to Thoralda and Tokyo and largely dismissed by the former as not sufficiently important or powerful to be relevant, which was entertaining. And I made some small talk with Tokyo before they concluded that their quarry had in fact been here and that they had therefore best set off. So they did, briskly, and in a hurry. We followed somewhat thereafter, and at that point there was a bit of a chase, and then the sand swallowed us all up. Well, all. 4 of us, Fewa and Lissa and Leorian and myself. And we had a bit of conversation about Fewa's apparent divinity and the intractability of the desert problem, and the importance of defending the town if we actually cared enough about it to make sure that Fewa would possibly be able to teach them to live properly in a desert. So we were returned to the surface, and there marched down the dune 100-strong army of soulless stone spear carriers, whom Lissa sank into dunes, and then they just walked out of the dunes. And combat began in earnest, with Leorian demonstrating his skills with his lure, and I, on the other hand, was looking for the other interloping divinities. And one of them landed on me, having come through a warehouse. It was a bit of a shock. After that, I stayed a bit out of the way and tried to assist the townsfolk while keeping an eye on the combat between Tokyo and Thoralda on the one hand, and Fewa on the other hand, who was wielding some manner of needle. And I performed a miracle. As it happened, it turned out to be Puff rather than Fewa who enacted my miracle upon direction. And then there was not a bat. And then there was not any stone supporting the area. We fell approximately 100 feet. And there were casualties. Leorian, backing up, please substitute the word Laurentin for the town's name, not Leorian, which is, I think, what I said there. Leorian dedicated the dead to Dusk, as he had apparently been instructed. And then we found ourselves on a plateau, all desaturated in color with a very close sky.
Excellent, thank you. The only thing I wish to point out is not something that had come up in the previous session or in our sort of green room discussion. Thoralda is mostly presenting as either non-binary or non-conforming, and I've been calling them they, though no conversation in character has taken place about their preferences. Not unreasonable assumptions that Des made there, but it reminded me that I should clarify it. So
thank you.
I think you are in the clear. I just had not made it particularly explicit. So
Cool.
That, I think, was an excellent detailed summary that gets us right to where we pick up here. So yeah, to set the scene just a little bit, everybody is in some way splayed or sprawled, except for Leorian. You're on this, sort of think of it as like a high prairie. You can see, if you cast your eyes about into the distance, mountains that seem unreachable, a sky that seems empty but close, a sea opposite the mountains that seem equally unreachable. And there's, if you happen to look in the correct direction, a hint of forest that you have no idea how you might ever get there. There are suggestions of shapes on the horizon that could be buildings or hillocks or maybe just rock formations. It's unclear.
Or could they be nothing at all?
It's possible that they could be nothing at all. There's a light breeze, and the sun is shining, though you can't see it. And the temperature is nothing. It's just you can barely feel it.
Room temperature.
There is, endemic to the place, a stillness and a silence. The only person to have landed on their feet is Leorian. And somehow, instinctively, Leorian, you know that you are in a place that is of dusk. In fact, as you think about it, you know the name of this place. Þockborr.
I assume that's with a TH.
Yes, with a thorn, in fact.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin, for validating my concern there.
I'm gonna cop to not knowing what the concern was. Oh.
I'm sorry for all the peeking just then, but
You're fine. I went ahead and put the spelling, at least since I don't have access to the character Thorn on my keyboard, in our
that makes it
there.
so much more helpful for us potty mouths.
So, Leorian, I'm going to give you first reaction here since you're not picking yourself up off the ground and brushing off your clothes.
I mean, I have a properly religious reaction, realizing where I am and the import thereof. I feel at the wind, which I assume I can't feel. I look to the sky where I see nothing. After a moment, I shake myself out of my reverie and ask, is everyone okay?
No.
Is this where Dosk is
What
hiding
happened to
himself?
Laurenton?
That was a bad question, and I don't know the answer to your question, which is a good question. Yeah.
No, I need to get back. I have to get back. I have to get home.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm sure we can arrange that. I mean, this place, I don't know how I know this, but this is my god's place. I can refer to him by name, and you're on a first name basis.
Yes, the answer to.
You actually hear, following that, Dosk's voice. All of you do. Dosk says, yeah, sorry for the rough ride, but listen, to answer your question, Laurenton is here. Here it is. Boy, this is awkward. I should have... Hi. I'm Dosk. I suppose that my reflex to introduce myself as the Duke of Nothing is a little bit passé now. Actually, the God of Nothing. And looking around, those of you who are looking for the source of the voice, it actually coalesces into a locale as Dosk is speaking, and you don't see Dosk. You see sort of the outline of a person, either in silhouette or as a white void. It kind of goes back and forth, almost as though there are two competing images, a white void and a black void, sort of competing for the foreground. So there's a little bit of a flicker. Sometimes there's even what would appear to a modern eye to be like scan lines, where their part of it is sort of changing at a different rate. So this sort of flickery absence in either black or white or both.
Once I'm
it's waving at you.
Standing, I will look at the voids, walk over and slap.
Your hand does pass through the
As
void
expected.
without any particular sensation on your part, but Dosk's sort of visual presence there does react as though slapped, and there's a beat at which he says, okay, I definitely deserved that. But if, well, no but, really. It won't help. But, nope. So I had the opportunity to ascend here, and, well, I took it because I thought it was the best thing to do. And now I have a chancel. Welcome to Þockborr. Make yourself at home, please. Including, and he gestures past the three of you to where Thoralda and Fewa are standing, including our other guests, august and esteemed company indeed. I'm having a lot of trouble. And then the silhouette disappears, as does the voice.
What does he mean, Laurenton's here? It's not here. It's there, and it fell. How do we get out of here, Leorian? How do we leave? There's always a way to leave. Are there gates? Like, oof.
There must be a way to leave, of course. Yeah. Gates, it looks like the answer is no to the gate thing specifically. But honestly, my plan was to ask Dosk, and that was Dosk. And he, I'm still composing myself because my face looks about the way you would expect someone's face to look if they just saw their god get slapped. And I say, I think we just need to find him again. Or if he's right, and he might be, and he probably is, this being, his realm and all, maybe Laurenton is here. Maybe everybody's, fine is a strong word, and I don't mean to impose that expectation on the situation, but perhaps they've transcended.
Transcended.
Maybe they're here now. Same as us, not same.
Yes.
I have a gift.
Mm-hmm. You do.
Specifically, once I find it on my character sheet, I am a world walker.
You are.
And I can sense secret roads and chancels and ways into and out of chancels.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the way out?
So every way is a way out, in theory. This is a chancel that is expansive enough, especially in comparison to something like Fermata, that it kind of coexists with the material world, but has superimposed itself on to the material world. And so being able to leave is a matter of finding and following the right path, or having the aid of the master of the chancel. Realm miracles would also do it. What this means for your current purposes is that you can sense the directions you need to head in order to leave unassisted. They're kind of arbitrary. It's not like there is a set path, just that if you follow what you sense closely enough with the intention of leaving, eventually you will leave. Although it is perhaps worth noting that you aren't sure how long it would actually take. One of the things that your sense gives you is that this place is pointlessly, preposterously vast.
I at least, due to the wording of World Walker, seem likely to just be able to step out, regardless of the paths, but others, yeah.
Right, no, if you wanted to take anybody with you.
But...
Yeah. The other thing that you do perceive is that out is easier than in.
I will look around and just chuckle sort of darkly to myself.
At this time, Thoralda and Fewa have approached where you are standing. Thoralda looks kind of like a thunderstorm that walks like a blacksmith, mostly glaring daggers at Fewa. Fewa has composed herself,
Is Puff here too?
and you note an absence of Puff. Puff is not in evidence. Fewa is the first to speak, and she says with more acid and rancor in her voice than you have heard her use on anything heretofore. I suppose that your god is a coward.
At whom
I
is
turn
that
on my
directed?
heels and say...
Okay.
Leorian, pretty clearly.
I turn on my heels and say, now, just a moment. Hey, he has the right to say that, but you, on the other hand, I don't really think you have standing to make that kind of determination about a divine being, like a fully divine.
Fewa holds up her hand and says, I rather think that I do, and I don't make the judgment lightly. This that you see around us, this is a chancel. They don't come free.
My face is a heroic attempt to pretend I know what a chancel is.
What's the cost?
Fewa fixes you with a serious stare, unblinking, and she says, 100 human deaths to make a chancel. It protects you. As a god, as an imperator, it makes you hard to attack. The chancel becomes your body, so you are difficult to attack. I've always found it a cowardly solution.
But the humans, I mean, they're in the chancel. They're not. I mean,
No.
the deaths. They're right. I mean, here now, they're fine. They're just.
She gives a bitter chuckle and says, "In a manner of speaking, I suppose, but they're not alive."
Oh, dusk, damn it. 100 eternal deaths.
And that's true of every chancel that we've been to. 100 people died in Lurenton.
Easily in the fall.
What caused the fall?
Thoralda speaks up and says, "What caused the fall was this vindictive..." They grit their teeth, say, "I'm glad I don't see the beast." Tohil fell. Tohil, Nobilis of the deep earth, fell. And the deep earth fell with him.
All of the deep earth, not just in Lurenton?
Oh, I'm sure the effect was somewhat localized. No telling how far, though. Was certainly enough to get this place off the ground. Charming. They spit.
What is your quarrel with each other? And speak clearly and plainly, because you do not understand what it's cost.
Thoralda snorts, and Fewa opens her mouth to respond, but as soon as the first syllable comes out of her mouth, Thoralda interrupts, and Fewa simply closes her mouth, and Thoralda says, "She is a thief. She stole from the deep earth and from the forge the blood of the earth itself as a trinket to be sold. The unworkable made to be worked. An offense to both. This needle of hers, it's deeply unnatural, and its existence both offends and harms my master and Tohil's. But if you ask her," and Fewa speaks up and says, "Commerce is the trade in goods, services, and monies between agreeing parties. I have stolen nothing." They glare at each other in icy silence.
What was the nature of the agreement, and who were the parties?
Fewa takes a deep breath, closing her eyes, while Thoralda rounds on you, Ramnet, and says, "Stay out of this, mortal. It does not concern you." And then turns their back on you.
You will speak to Ramnet with more respect than that, especially because you have disrespected, possibly by my count, 2 additional gods. And
Thoralda looks like they are going to respond, but
I pull the ingot of bloodstone out from one of my pockets, and I say, "Is this this tiny thing part of that entire quarrel? Your childish fight?"
Rather than responding verbally as they were going to, Thoralda's face becomes a mask of rage as they lunge at the ingot in your hand, only to be stopped by Fewa's needle driving through their sternum. It doesn't seem to hurt them as it would hurt a mortal, but they do seem immobilized by it. And Fewa, looking over her shoulder at you, Lissa, says, You have my sincere apologies for the way that things have gone, but, well, surely you can see that my desire to continue the quarrel was less than none.
I can see that.
What is the nature of the agreement, and who were the parties?
Fewa looks considering for a moment and then says, there were some mortal miners in Narim who wished to dig some of this bloodstone out of the earth. They approached me and offered me some of the haul of bloodstone in return for tools that could extract it. I then went on to sell it, as is my wont, as a merchant. Thoralda, for their part, looks like they would very much like to say something, but when they open their mouth, only a trickle of blood comes out.
I mumble, that doesn't sound much like a theft. And then, as though it's part of the same thought, I say, he's the negator of the unjust order. He wouldn't build this place of people. He's not just a, and in this word is more venom than I can possibly convey. He's not just a boss.
We will get to that in just a moment, with all due respect, Leorian.
Yeah, it's yeah, of course, my furious, yeah.
I suspect the root of the issue seems to be a lack of respect for mortals and their decision, which is ironic considering that those who work at the forge are mortal. I could melt this with miraculous energy. I could wield whatever I wish with miracles, but if the forge is to persist, it is on the bent backs and sweat and furrowed brows of those working the forge, those mortals that you so disdain. You can take this back. Just leave your quarry outside of my realm.
Thoralda looks very much like they would like to take it back, but remain immobilized, slowly going first red and then sort of purple in the face with the effort of trying to speak. And Fewa, turning more fully toward Lissa and switching hands that she's holding the bloodstone needle that is currently through Thoralda's sternum in, says, you have my apologies. It was not my intention to bring this quarrel to you, but I did have business in Taraxis that brought me here separately. I would appreciate getting back there, but I suppose that while we are here, we may have business to attend to, and her eyes drift toward Leorian.
I definitely don't notice. I am I am running through the calculations in my head over and over about what she said, about what they said must be a lie. But I can't convince myself that it was. So I'm probably a million miles away, even though I'm, of course,
Fair
here.
enough.
If you wish to keep your fury, Thoralda, you will keep it contained until we find a way out of here, and until you've taken your army and your quarry elsewhere, or fight elsewhere.
Thoralda, with a ton of effort, nods incrementally, gritting their teeth. Fewa glances at Lissa, glances at Thoralda, glances back at Leorian, and then pulls the needle out, this arc of blood droplets, and it shrinks back to whatever its traveling state is. She has it clenched in her hand there. She puts it away. Thorelda falls to the sort of hard, grassy ground, gasping, and then pushes themselves up. And without making eye contact with anyone, says, I seem to be at something of a disadvantage. So I suppose that I shall abide by whatever strictures you choose to place on me. I will, however, note that you are very young, Mistress of Fury, for one of our kind. Mortals, you see, come and go. In fact, you may be interested to know, they have passed from this world several times, only to be recreated later by the gods. I understand your attachment to them, for I once shared it. But if you will take a bit of unsolicited advice, you would do well to leave such concerns behind, because things will only get worse for a time. They take a deep breath and push themselves to their feet, swaying only slightly, and you note that as they stand, they have the bloodstone ingot that Lyssa had tossed at them, clutched in one hand, white-knuckled.
I appreciate your unsolicited advice and your concern, but I fail to see much meaning in this world in what we do, were it not for the souls of mortals.
Did you not see it to be within the purview of the miners to my bloodstone? Or was the offense in making it mineable, or was the offense in Feywa's accepting some of the bounty? Where did the fault lie in your eyes?
This is probably the first time that Thorelda has properly looked at you, Ramnet. And they speak slowly. All were at fault. When a god creates a chancel, they sink their physical essence into the land. It was a tolerated rudeness to mine there at all. It was beyond blasphemy to excavate the bloodstone.
So the bloodstone then is the substance of the divine?
In so many words.
I can understand how that would be an offense. And given your distaste for mortals, I can understand how you felt cheated out of being a proper party to any such negotiation.
Your understanding warms me, Prophet.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't, I echo.
Thorelda gives you a crooked smile.
And so then, the cowardice here was using the deaths of mortals rather than what? Killing them en masse? Would that have been the honorable, the upright, the brave, the godly thing to do? Either this whole order needs to come crashing down, which, if you've got a plan for that, sign me up. Or it seems to me we should probably stop stabbing each other and throwing stones at each other and figure out how to, I don't know, make things a little better. I crouched down and
Dusk, did you take this power unto yourself in order to bring it all crashing down?
There is no immediate response to Ramnet's question. In response to the Leorians, I feel bad calling it a diatribe outburst, maybe? I don't know.
You can call it a tantrum.
It's hard to characterize.
for all he cares at this moment, yeah.
Thoralda and Fewa start to speak at the same time, and Fewa gives way. Thoralda says, "You will find that I disagree with the esteemed merchant on this. It is mere pragmatism to have a chancel. And the mortals, in some places, give themselves willingly to its creation. It is only in places where there is no established worship that they need to be taken like marks in the night." Fewa, taking the opportunity of Thoralda entering a lull, says, "I call it cowardice because, well, some gods choose to remain embodied, to remain whole but vulnerable, and simply to defend themselves against all comers. Did, perchance, and her look takes in everybody here, not just Leorian, did perchance this Dusk explain to you what he was signing up for when he ascended?"
He said nothing
No?
and went.
She looks as though she's going to say something and then instead shakes her head and begins differently and says, "All of the gods feel it. There is an absence, a pull at the top of the world. It will only accommodate one. And someone will fill it.
And this is...
The competition is to be the one who fills it."
And this is why all the gods are fighting.
There is, at the end of the day, no other real option. Unless you can conceive of a world in which every aspect of reality personified decided that they would be fine with their existences ending on, say, an election or drawing of lots, then all of those too meek to fight for their right to assume the position at the top are destroyed very early on. Those who fight, well, you've seen what happens. Chancels are one way to defend yourself in the war, though of course they do not come for free, thus with a significant glance at Leorian. And in the end, however alliances may be formed in the short term, there will be but one. And my research suggests that they will reign uncontested for ages beyond human reckoning.
But not permanently.
Though eventually this spot becomes open again, and creation throws up new candidates who will eventually come to conflict.
Because it's happened before.
That's my belief, though if you asked me for proof, I could not show it.
If at the top of the world lies an absence, my elder in divinity, then it seems to me my god's a shoo-in. But no, I don't think he's in it to conquer. I don't think he would have, and this to Ramnet and Talissa as well, I don't think he would have left you to... Did you ever know him to be power hungry?
No, I don't doubt him to have had his reasons. He just didn't tell me.
If you took me, my most smoky sir, to be attempting to talk you out of your anger, I would never. I'm starting to work up some of my own, if I'm perfectly honest, but I don't think that any of us should be caught up in some ludicrous and self-annihilating war for absolute power over the cosmos based on what? Some fairy tale about how at the top of everything there's nothing, but not the kind of nothing you know what I mean. A greater nothing, a nothing beyond anything, a nothing that will negate any possibility of us working together. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. It's as simple as that. I do not believe it.
Who says it has to be Phil?
Thoralda laughs a little bit and says, "This is what comes of a land without a faith. Goodness, listen to yourselves. The gods are not people. The gods are the primordial forces of the world."
I know of one that was. A person, that is.
Yes, but no longer. And Thoralda gestures one hand at the chancel that you are standing in. And Fewa says, "Yes, perhaps I undersold it, though the absence at the top pulls, and it is a constant fight to ignore it. If you are eternal and unsleeping, how do you ignore something that pulls on you constantly?"
By eating
Some
it.
do manage. That's not the laugh that Fewa makes. She instead sort of says, it's sort of like, a little bit of a formal laugh. And Thoralda is staring somewhat agog at Leorian at the suggestion. And Fewa, holding Leorian's gaze with sort of a measured caution, says, "Suppose then that someone were to take that spite with the intention of annihilating themselves once they achieved it. That might be one way of ending the struggle." Thoralda begins to cough, seemingly about to have said something when Fewa let that drop, and having it get sort of caught in their throat with whatever noise of response they were trying to make on the heels of that suggestion.
This conversation might be easier to have if we could stop stabbing each other briefly.
Fewa shrugs one shoulder.
Are you suggesting, perhaps, Fewa, that the throne itself could be destroyed?
It is my hope, anyway.
And I like this theory.
I suppose.
But who's to say that creation would not just, as you said, throw up entities again?
Well, if there's no throne to occupy, then why would there need to be contenders for it?
Fewa nods and says, "It is true, I do not have a guarantee in this suggestion. It's possible that the throne would simply remain empty and the cycle would begin anew. It's also possible that the self-annihilation of the occupant of the throne, as you call it, would destroy creation entire. I view either as being preferable to not trying the method, but I wouldn't blame anyone else for having a different reaction to the idea."
So I come back again to a question you ignored earlier. Well, not ignored, but politely deflected. What is your relationship to Baptiste? I apologize for the inconvenience.
She looks a little troubled and says, "Well, if I could but locate Puff and make my way back to the desert, I would be she. As it stands, I am a part of her. Not in the sense that Nobilis are a part of their gods, but that Nintis split herself somewhat, and I am the greater part of that fracturing. But there are others spread about. Understand," and she glances sidelong at Thoralda, "that I do not give this information lightly, but I treat you in candor because I wish for your assistance, and I believe that you could be reasoned with to provide it."
Thank you. What is it you wish assistance with? Sorry to interrupt, Melissa.
I want to second the thanks, and also affirm that we can be reasoned with, even if my temper is threatening to overtake me.
I too compose myself and say, I too appreciate the candor and hope you'll forgive one who was, in divine terms, born yesterday.
Being young is not a sin, but it can, of course, cause problems of its own. Being close-minded, however, and she looks at Thoralda, well, perhaps the less said, the better. Thoralda has taken to looking somewhat sullen and withdrawn. It's unclear what they are. Thoralda, though, does seem to be turning inward some, paying less attention to what's going on among you all and doing some thinking of their own. Fewa straightens, though, and says, in the meantime, I believe it would be productive to try to have a lengthier conversation with the master of this place. If he will accept my help, I can help him to manifest more completely and stably. In terms of gods or imperators, he is, well, not yet all the way born from his mother, I'm afraid. And so it is not surprising that he is facing some challenges.
I didn't mean to speak to you as one who wouldn't know. I think what I do is I perform a divination. Can I do that since we're in the chancel?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the literal description is to know about trouble. Can I feel Dosk's presence, I suppose, is the actual question I'm asking. And how that mechanically works comes second.
Mm-hmm. You can, without using any miracle points.
I have discovered some trouble.
So you can, with a level 0 realm miracle, you can sense Dosk's presence. It is not highly localized, but the direction that you get is down into the earth below you.
This may not be useful information, but the master of this place is below us.
Fewa comments that, I suppose that makes sense, as that is what happens to the stuff of an imperator when they enchancel themselves, as their physical form diffuses into the landscape. She seems like she is about to go on, but Leorian, you get something of a premonition that something is about to take place. And in a moment that is sort of expanded to be as large as it needs to be, Leorian, Lissa, Romnet, you are all addressed by Dosk's disembodied voice saying, right, sorry, this is tough, still getting used to it, but I'd love to have a conversation in private. So, if you just kind of give me some permission and I can, affect you miraculously, I can bring you down to where we can have like a more face-to-face conversation.
Fine.
Yeah, Leorian, you don't get a choice.
Good. That saves me trying to negotiate how eager I am and yet how not eager I wish to appear.
So here's a question that I don't think is in the original description of Þockborr as a chancel. Did you have anything in mind for the heart of the chancel?
That's a good question, and I definitely never thought about it.
I mean,
if it's,
I have a suggestion if I may, but if not, then
please, by all means.
It seems somewhat central to Dosk that the rendering of conflicts meaningless and the aspect of nothing appears individually to each who holds it. So there could be sort of a localized, permanent instantiation of that.
Interesting. So, having said fine in words or attitudes,
And no one
you find
questions
yourselves
that it's
immediately
required that I
relocated.
say so.
Well, probably nobody who would be able to put two and two together hears you in this sort of locked moment. But sure enough, there's a momentary sensation of very rapid falling, and then you are for a moment suspended in a void. Not black, not white, not gray, just
not.
Nothing. But it does take form after a moment. Not solid form, but Alyssa, you're probably the first to recognize where you kind of are. This looks an awful lot like the nightcap, but drawn in charcoal and empty, but for yourselves. There's a muted quality to all of the senses here, and a weird way in which everything feels both vast and smothering. But behind the bar is a gesture-drawn figure of a person of about Dosk's frame. And the figure is tending the bar. Sort of at a lowered frame rate. Not that the concept would have a lot of meaning. And of course, Leorian, you have no idea where this is other than a drawing of a bar that you appear to be in somehow. But the figure behind the bar that you can just tell intuitively is Dosk. Says, "Hi, right. So first off, sorry. Had to make kind of a split-second decision, and I really thought that I could do more good here than I had been. But, it wasn't how I think any of us would have wanted it to happen had we had the choice."
Did they suffer? Were they already dead?
Oh, well, the majority were the ones that Leorian, and the figure gestures, just dedicated at Lurenton. And so I didn't do anything to cause their deaths, but well, when I started on the project as a way to try and be able to do more without getting taken out by more established gods, I tried to
Did you let
folks
Leorian know what he was doing?
Well, I just asked him to dedicate any
Did you give any
deaths
clarity
to me.
as to why you were asking? You dealt with the big they them as much as I did. I would expect less obliqueness from you.
Well, that's fair. But bandwidth was limited, and I wasn't sure it would work. So I tried to be efficient.
That was my home, Dosk. It might have not felt like one, but it was my home.
And I couldn't have done anything to save it. All I could do is
nothing.
Make use of it.
And if they hadn't been dedicated, which I did, as you asked, pretty good job, I think, given the terms. What would have happened to them? What happens to mortals when if they're not used as bricks and mortar? Then what happens? What fate did we take away from these people?
Dosk is silent for a moment and shakes his head and says, "If anyone ever gets to know that, I think it's after they take the big chair."
Can I do a zero to sense whether there are 100 eternal deaths here as well?
No, because this isn't your realm. That only works in your chancel. Yeah. Dosk is silent for a moment and then continues and says, "Look, I don't expect at all for anybody to be happy with any of these turns of events, but you know,
you left us.
You
left us, and then you had your new Nobilis take souls from my hometown. I think not being happy with the outcome of this is an understatement unbefitting of you."
All right, that's probably fair. My goal is to try to put an end to this.
By taking the chair.
I'm flying. Well, at the very least, from trying to keep anybody from getting there until I know how to put a stop to it. You know, the spot is there. As the god of nothing, there might be something that I can do, but I don't understand its nature. I don't know that anybody really does. Divine, mortal, or anything in between. What I do know is that I can't do anything if I get knocked out of the running right away and cannibalized. So I was trying to avoid that.
You said you had choices. What were the other options that you chose this over?
Well, prior to sensing that there was trouble brewing in Larenton, I was on the lookout for people who were approaching the ends of their lives.
I think more specifically,
no.
Asking about your choices in your step up world.
That.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, I could have passed all of the power that catapulted me up here to the Obsidian God. That didn't feel like a great move, given our experiences with them.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could have just let it run wild into the ether, and I could only really make a guess as to what that would have been resulting in, but seemed likely to be, the sort of reformation of Palaran or a god in his place, or maybe just slurped up by Sirtha and the Deep and the Obsidian God. So
it makes a fair bit more sense than I was imagining.
It's about what I expected.
Can you... I'm assuming I can still perform, domain miracles without any... Okay.
Yeah.
I just have 0 domain.
Can you... Oh. Can you...
They're not domain realm. Sorry. Wrong.
From this, and I do a ghost miracle of darkness and surround myself in shadow briefly to show that I have a new toy.
Mm-hmm. Dosk sort of sets his hands on the bar and sighs a little bit and says, I think so. I'm trying to figure out how it could be done. The central issue is that removing the shards from Nobilis is fatal, which I don't want. But I think of myself as proof that they can be repurposed. So I have a hypothesis that I might be able to for lack of a better word, poach existing Nobilis, and in doing so, take their domains into my own portfolio.
Are there actually drinks behind that bar?
Well, kinda.
There's an absence of
And
them.
appropriately enough, Dosk grabs a bottle of absinthe and pours 4 glasses and says, I make no guarantees, but, cheers. And takes a drink.
I hold my glass up and whatever is in the cup goes down as 1 gulp.
Yeah. You taste it. You feel it. You're not sure it's there.
I push mine away and tell Dosk that I would forgive him for a hug.
Dosk's posture is positively childlike in its phases of sort of excitement and then sort of dejection, as Dosk says, I would love to try, and moves around the bar, slowly regarding you as though he expects you to change your mind. And sure enough, when he approaches and opens his arms, he waits to see if you reciprocate the hug. He circles you in his arms, and you can see that that's happening, but there's no tactile sensation.
Well, we tried.
Do you have it in you for another try?
He chuckles a little bit and says, yeah, and steps close and opens his arms.
What would I have to roll to try to pick him up? Is this a lifting stance sort of deal? I know it's not a hug unless I attempt to, pick him up.
Right. Let's see.
Is it an athletics roll? Because again, I can use lifting stance.
Athletics plus eerie.
No, don't you dare say eerie. Aspect miracle.
No. Just flat roll aspect plus athletics.
Oh.
That makes some kind of sense.
I was going to say, I think if you roll your body plus athletics plus 2 dice like you do for lifting stance, I can at least tell you what happens and what your options are.
Do I still have the master die in athletics?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 5 plus a master die, I think. 5 plus a master die.
For a second, I was hoping for... I saw like a 6 and a 9, and I was like, can I do it with my master die? But sadly, it's going to be 2 10s.
Okay. Are you willing to use a spirit miracle point on this?
Yeah.
You are able to essentially, more or less with Dosk's tacit permission, when you try it, to use your Octoritas to like sleeve your arms in this hug, and you can't actually feel that you have anything in your arms, but you sort of pick the visual form that Dosk has up in this hug for about a slow count of 1 before he passes back through your embrace and settles back to the floor. He doesn't have a face in this aspect, just a
small disconcerting note.
Mannequin's head.
Yeah.
But he does gesture as though sort of wiping a tear away, and you hear a sniffle. and he sort of, after a moment, snaps back to behind the bar as though, kind of a rubber band being let go. And,
I will raise the not absinthe and down it.
He does the same with what remains of his.
I raise mine and I say, they're seeing what I saw, what I see, the beginning to, my sovereign of nothing. This is not important, but upon hearing the name of the place, the Furious Queen, I do believe, even in her not inconsiderable and more than understandable distress, made an all but imperceptible chortle. Perhaps we could just call it boar. As I say, not the most important thing.
There is a long moment of silence, and a sound emanates from Dosk that could be laughter or could be an attempt to stifle sobbing. At which point he goes, yeah, boar for short. Thank you.
I down the glass in immense satisfaction.
For your service. I know it's been kind of a whirlwind, and I am glad that we can talk like this now in this place. It's kind of a relief having to keep such a low profile and exert so much of my ability to communicate before. Well, I'm not going to say I understand why Mott does what they do, but it is intelligible, if not a good decision from this side of the thing. Dosk takes a deep breath and says, so the bat, the one
Tohiel?
Is that the bat's name? Okay. Tohiel. It's not dead. Like its heart isn't beating, but it's sort of deep in the plateau, and the shard is still there. So given enough time, it'll come back. What I hope to be able to do is to have it, when it comes back, be one of mine. If I can negotiate or ensorcel or whatever, with the shard or the soul or both, it could be a good test run for recruiting other Nobilis, especially as this one is, maybe a little more amenable to negotiation in its current state.
Oh, what will become of Tohiel?
Well, I hope nothing too terrible. It's uncharted territory as far as I know, but I was hoping that if I could get your help, it would be more easy to make sure that Tohiel kind of comes through fine. I guess I haven't been able to communicate yet, really, beyond just kind of observing the soul shard. I don't know, I guess, how Tohiel would feel about the prospect, and I wouldn't want to force anyone into my service, but it does feel like a really good opportunity to maybe see what can be done. And I think that in addition to maybe whatever kind of power or nuance or ability you all might have for this kind of thing, just having people who aren't me and aren't my Nobilis helping, then that would be maybe a little more persuasive.
I suspect that my presence there would be a detriment.
Oh.
Why?
In the spirit of candor, perhaps. As you possibly noticed, Dosk, I too have gone up in the world.
What have you done?
I took a knife at the well.
So you get a quick flash of this.
Oh God,
I
You were there.
am the Duke of Murder.
I was there. Yeah. Oh no, Romnut. No.
Dosk is sort of, turning his head between the two of you as you talk, and he goes, wow, yeah, I thought there was something, congratulations, and I'm sorry?
My other options were less kind.
Oh.
What were they?
Jeez.
I know what I know what was. I know what Mavia chose, but I don't.
Remind me what the other one was.
Why did you choose?
Remind me what the other one was other than Madness, Adam. Because mostly I remember you were not offering me secrets.
Right.
There was one that was kind of happy, though.
Yeah, no, I want to say that the other one was Revelry.
Yeah.
That you're remembering that as less kind is a whole thing.
It is.
Well, when offered by Mott.
Sure. What kind of party are you being invited to? It's a fair point.
Revelry and Madness were the other
I bypassed Revelry.
Well, to be fair, it was Mavia making that choice.
Well, Þockborr.
That gets a laugh out of Dosk, although he does try to sort of tamp it down, and he says in earnest, "Yeah, I am sorry to hear, Lissa, that you didn't get Revelry. I know that this side of you would have liked that a lot more than Darkness."
I mean, the night can offer some benefits, but we need to refocus, I guess, on enlisting Tohill. As long as you can promise me in whatever way that you will do everything within your power to save him.
I will. I don't know what to expect.
When you do, you offer my apologies. I was simply trying to ensure that Fewa did not come to harm.
I'll accept your apologies later from it.
There will be separate apologies later to use.
Das kind of nods a little bit and says, yeah, so if Tohill's body doesn't, well, I would say pull through, but doesn't come back, I don't know if there's much that I can do. I will try. If Tohill, in current state, doesn't want to list up, I have no idea what the best way to ensure survival is. And then interrupting Dosk is a familiar voice, Fewa's. She walks in the door that would normally lead out to the streets of Fermata and says, I suppose I might be able to be of assistance there, but I think that God to God, we should have a long talk before I commit to anything. Des, you were indicating that you had something.
I mean, perhaps you could substitute shards, as it were.
Right,
You
yes.
can presumably
Fewa,
occupy nothing is left behind.
Das sort of nods thoughtfully, and Fewa says, that might work, so long as you were able to secure agreement from the Nobilis beforehand, and could overpower the spirit presence of the previous Imperator. But especially if the Nobilis is currently dead, that might be an issue. It's hard to communicate under those circumstances. But, unlike a mortal, the soul of that Nobilis will have some connection to the shard, and so can, in theory at least, return. While Dosk processes that a little bit, Fewa sort of faces more decisively towards our three-player characters and says, My apologies for my role in everything that has befallen the three of you of late. I hope that this show of good faith toward an opponent who was attempting to take my life does, if not engender forgiveness, then toleration on your part.
From where I stand, well, there's nothing to forgive. I understand the situation a bit better now. And as much as I'm still grieving, I know that you played no part in it.
She inclines her head and says, "You are most gracious, Furious Queen."
Yeah,
From the moment that Fewa has said God to God, since we're in a bar and all, I have squared myself between Fewa and Dask as though a bar fight might break out. Only now do I begin to relax and nod assent to what Lissa has said.
Mm-hmm.
It does not seem that their aggression came as a result of any actual aggression on your part.
Fewa nods and says, "Certainly from a mortal perspective that is the case. The main thing to remember, though, is that gods are their natures," and she shoots a significant glance at the figure of Dask behind the bar. Says, "Whatever personality is there is layered on top of that. And so, sin, for lack of a better word, is any transgression against the nature of the god in question. The god naming it a sin. So, in the case of my transgression, I can earnestly say that I did not expect that to be a catalyst for violence specifically, but it is worth knowing that I expect violence from other gods at pretty much all times, for all reasons, provided I encounter the wrong god at the wrong time. But I can act only according to my own nature, as can they. And part of my nature is commerce. And so, she sort of spreads her hands, says, so it happened."
Speaking of violence specifically, if I can make as well as unmake tempo, then does it follow that you, my good and smoky lord, can unmake a murder? If our goal is to bring someone back to life, it seems to me that assuming you can access the negative, as it were, of your domain of murder, then you may be of singular use in the pursuit.
I suspect that unmaking a murder simply means that they will have died. Possibly naturally, or possibly falling on a knife that happened to be there without a hand to hold it.
If we really need to work on your branding, Romnut.
Fewa chimes in here and says, "You have the right of it for the most part, but that sort of thing tends to depend entirely on the magnitude and intent of the miracle. A destruction of murder is certainly possible. That would still result in a death, but take away the murder. However, with sufficient power and intent behind the act, you could undo a murder entirely, although it may, in addition to tapping your power, exhaust you on an emotional or spiritual level, since you are
I'm not a god.
Taking away from your estate."
I've done that before, would not necessarily recommend.
Fewa nods and says, "I do look forward to the conversation that Dask here and myself might have." She seems a little brittle when she says that, but, is not aggressive. She says, "I also wish to ask a very presumptuous favor of the Nobilis in present here. Nobilis in attendance here. Have you familiarity with the Godswoods?
That sounds like a lore check to me.
Has come up a little bit in campaign, but knowing anything beyond there are some Godswoods, yes, is going to be a lore check, which for Romnet is 2 plus a master die.
Excuse me.
If anybody else wants to roll,
I mean, that would be 1 for Leorians.
Yeah, Leorian can do.
I will just skip this roll.
Sure, that would be 2.
Lore for me is 6. No master die.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at language. My bad.
I was very confused there.
They both start with L in my defense. Yeah, 6 no master die. Knowledge plus lore is 6 for you.
Can I aspect miracle for perfect recall?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, you can. Or at the very least, high-level human recall without spending a miracle.
High-level human recall. So I will do that.
So, yeah, that is essentially going to be like having 6 10s here. So you can't get any new knowledge that you didn't have, but you know a decent little bit about this, as the Godswoods figure very prominently in a lot of songs and stories, especially older ones from Taraxis. The Godswoods are, on balance, a relatively small forest. I mean, they take several days to journey through, but compared to, the Shadowed Lands or larger forests in sort of north eastern Taraxis, not at all that tremendous. But they are accounted as being older than almost any other forest known to Taraxans, and while very few people live there, and the ones that do live on the very periphery, and no one maintains the single road that goes through it. The road through it is, well, always there. It's never overgrown. And if you do wander off the path, there's a decent chance, according to the stories at least, that you never get seen again. But there's also a decent chance that you find something that looks awfully like a person made it. These can take a lot of different forms, but the most common are small to mid-sized carvings, sometimes of people, sometimes of animals, sometimes of plants, sometimes of abstract designs, sometimes of things that don't seem as abstract but are unrecognizable to Taraxan eyes. And most of these carvings tend to have some kind of unusual property. It could be something as simple as is always kind of warm, regardless of the temperature and environment around it. But they could be more complex as well. Some of the most sought-after ones have more or less usable functions. If you can figure out the gesture or the word that activates it, it will always do a thing supernaturally. These could range from profoundly useful, like a small gout of flame, to more like party tricks. A sunbeam indoors for a time.
The Godswoods is in the small old forest with the one untended
road. Fewa says, the very same, or so I'm told. I haven't been there myself, being mostly, a desert traveler.
Can you only go where there's desert?
Would be more accurate to say that desert follows me where I go, but the further I go, the thinner I'm stretched.
Uh-huh.
This is the furthest I've been from the Caroline Wastes in quite some time, but I came with my destination as the Godswoods. Seeing what I bring with me, I am loath to continue my journey personally, and hope that you may finish it for me.
If it's no slight against the desert, but I know a lot of lands between here and there thrive on crops and the land itself as it is. So, I think I personally would be willing.
Very well. Das,
She nods.
I have a couple of questions.
Fewa inclines her head, and Dosk says, "Oh, well, by all means, ask."
On. Very well. Would the incursion of desert into a bog or otherwise uninhabited lands increase your power? Would it count as a move against the Obsidian God?
She considers for a moment. She says, "I am only vaguely acquainted with the Obsidian God, but all account them as unpredictable, and it is unclear what they might perceive of as an offense. That said, the spreading of desert is something of a two-sided coin for me. I gain influence over places I didn't have influence before, but my nature is spread thinner and my attention is less close, and my control over what happens in the deserts slowly slips."
Dusk. This is your place.
Yeah.
In a chancel, if one is sufficiently tuned, my understanding is one can do whatsoever one pleases to some degree.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the dead?
Dusk poses thoughtfully, since there is no face to express thoughtfulness, and says,
He becomes the thinker emoji.
more or less, "I suppose it hadn't really occurred to me to try, and I think that it would depend on what state of dead we were talking about. Is there anyone in particular you
have a
were
bat
going to ask about?"
downstairs.
Right. Well, I suppose that if it doesn't violate my nature, the bat's nature, or the nature of the place, then it's at least a possibility. And I'd be a fool not to try.
That may be a way to inquire about the potential for defection without needing me to be a party to that conversation.
Right. If we do need you, though, are you willing to manipulate the murder?
Oh, absolutely. I don't really want to
all right. I just want to make sure.
Kill people, particularly myself. Murders will happen, and I suppose that, someone has to be in charge of that.
This is what I've been saying.
Yeah.
I mean, if there have to be demigods, better to be one, right?
No.
Yeah, you could have gone with revelry, though.
Yes, but imagine what sort of
That is a
parties
point.
Mott would want to throw.
I mean, imagine what sort of fury Mott wants, but hey, I make furious joy.
Don't
I'm
get
a
too
bit more
invested in the idea of
entrenched in
joyful
the
murders.
church, and therefore the expectation. I apologize for the choice I made.
There's not anything that naturally kind of positive comes out of murder. You just need to come up with some sort of nickname, like Duchess of Delight had a good ring to it.
I mean,
It could be the Duke of Dastardly Deeds.
Revolutions do
fun.
tend to start upon some mountain.
Fewa intones fairly soberly, "We in this room, if I understand our intentions correctly and everyone has been honest with me, are in fact embarking on something quite a lot more serious, by most reckonings, than simple murder. We are talking about mass deicide. If murder makes you uncomfortable, then you may be in the wrong place, not wishing to offend.
I was the one who came up with the idea that resulted in Dusk's ascension.
You do, oh Lord of Murder, seem fairly well suited to the task. My advice was certainly directed more at the lovely young lady who, understandably, does not seem to have the stomach for it.
You've met me.
On a good day.
On a good day.
I would never deign to speak on behalf of the Furious Queen, but as someone wiser in these matters than myself recently pointed out, gods are not people.
Also that, the more I hang out with accepting your lovely self, of course, Feywa.
Completely out of character. My mind immediately went, substituted corporations for gods there.
Right.
In keeping with our nature as dice punks.
Subtext is out, text is in.
Yeah.
Subtlety is for cowards.
Subtlety is for cowards.
Feywa, for her part, responds with a smile that would look somewhat more at home on Puff, and says, I think we do understand one another then, if I may. I am taking a risk in disclosing this to you all, but recent events have shown me that risks may be called for. Things do seem to be moving rapidly now, and an alliance between other imperators is cause for alarm. So, the reason I'm seeking the Godswoods is because I believe them to be what remains of the previous Overgod. And I believe that we can make use of that.
Incidentally,
I
apologize for
appreciate
making
your candor.
Puff the instrument of Tokyo's murder. I did not sufficiently specify, and my intent was more that we will not take care of things.
She nods and says, I appreciate your apology.
I do hope that no harm has come to Puff.
Remember, I can sense that Puff is out there, whether harmed or not. It will not have been the first time he suffered injury. But I do appreciate your apology, and I am burdened, because of my nature, with much better recall than most mortals have, even those who have been raised to the status of a divine. And I remember what it was like to be young, and to be learning what your power could do. Indeed. Now, Thoralda is likely not far from trying to set fire to the plane. It would be wise for at least some of us, I think, to return, but she looks at Dosk and says, I would like that word. And Dosk sort of nods slowly and says, yeah, no, me too, and I can guarantee no funny business.
I give Dosk ludicrously the look that a bodyguard would give someone before leaving them alone. Like, you okay?
Seeing your look, but being unable to return one of his own, Dosk sort of leans a little toward Leorian and says, I really couldn't ask for a better first Nobilis, and it is possible that with recruits or new blood, you could have Familia Caelestis here. Now that I have a Chancel, that becomes a possibility. But I went through with using 100 people's deaths to make this Chancel in order to make myself safe in situations like this. So you're good.
Look, I believe in what you're doing. In the future, I ask only that you make it clear what I'm doing to further the cause.
He sort of nods slowly and says, I've been on that side of things, and I know it's not fun to get piecemeal information. And one of the things that I hope that Fewa and I can discuss is, how to more efficiently use my divine channels of communication. So, sorry about that, if that's not weird, and I'll do what I can.
I give a deep bow, and then try to disappear and realize it might not be up to me.
It works. You're in your realm. There's no obvious way to get to this spot without just willing it, and so you pop literally with a displacement of air back into the spot you were on the plateau.
What are the ways in as well as the ways out? I might ask.
Like, yeah, really wish I'd have known what I was doing a little bit more. So you can negate something to get in from pretty much anywhere. Like give something up. I think if you find yourself really wanting something that you didn't think you could want, that probably also will work, and can be accidental in either case. It's just the only it's the way it sort of ended up. Exits are sort of easier, sort of harder. If you just walk out with the intention of walking out, you will eventually get out, and I, or probably Leorian, if he practices enough, can let people out more easily.
I suspect I can find my own way out, but knowing
good,
the way
good.
in, if you will consent to visitation.
I wouldn't
useful.
want to keep you. Yeah, I wouldn't want to keep you out. I think that Leorian could, again, with enough practice, be sort of a could be a ferryman, so to speak, to get people in and out in sort of small batches. But otherwise, once you have entrance, right? Once you're able to get in, I think you can probably do it again without having to give something else up again or want something new. But it's all kind of new to me. Like I said, I didn't actually design it this way. It's just sort of the shape it's snapped to. Sorry, it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, it's got to be real hard being a god and all.
He sort of chuckles. He says, "A lot of things are easier, but nobody handed me an instruction manual, and I'm really, really wishing there was a book I could read on it right now." So,
Well, you've at least solved, I think, the mystery of the 100 eternal deaths.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Well, and hopefully maybe Fewa and I can, she can fill me in a little bit if she's willing, on some of the stuff that I don't know to ask or whatever.
Just remember that she's also in charge of commerce. That may be useful.
Dosk doesn't have a face in this aspect, but you can feel him grinning and say, "That is one place where I'm pretty comfortable with the rules, but thanks for the warning."
Oh, don't worry. And also, I'm keeping track of your grandfather.
Best thing for him, really.
Someone needs to.
Thanks. And yeah, for real. And, sorry.
It's a connection. I'll pat him on the hand and then head out the bar.
All right. Yeah. You walk out of the door and find yourself back up on the plateau, which we'll catch up with in just a moment. Currently, it's Dosk and Fewa and Lissa in the bar.
I'll probably also give Dosk a ghost of a hug. Oh, actually, scratch that. I'm gonna do a ghost miracle of shadows and give him a shadow hug. Like 2 little shadowy limbs.
It works a treat until you realize that your shadowy limbs look exactly like Mavia's tendrils. Your stomach drops and your heart skips a beat and they dissipate, although you do get the hug off before they dissipate, and Dosk does not seem unsettled.
Well, darn. I was imagining more of those little sticky hands you used to get from coin dispensers. But shadow.
Yeah, absolutely. That was absolutely what I was imagining you were imagining.
Perfect. We're in sync about the sticky hands.
But yeah, it's not exactly what you get. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, you would head out as well. Find yourself on the plateau. Fewa stays behind.
The gods
whatever
talk
they are
amongst
about to talk
themselves,
about. Indeed. Leorian, you're the first to arrive back on the plateau by a couple of minutes, and you're confused a little bit at first because you don't initially lay eyes on Thoralda. But then a little spray of dirt comes up from somewhere a little ways off, and walking over, you can see that Thoralda has begun to dig. There are tools not particularly suited to this on their person that they have started to use to, carve into the dry, hard, slightly rocky soil of this plateau. And you suspect an aspect miracle is at play because this hole is already like 8 feet deep and 6 feet at the top, 2 feet at the bottom. It's a lot.
I draw out my lute and I begin accompanying the digging in a mocking fashion. Each stroke of the dig is a pluck or a strum. It's got a jaunty rhythm that is studiously undignified.
Roll your command perform music. 6 plus an expert die.
Sounds
so set
good.
that expert die and then roll 6 dice.
I will set that expert die at 6 in the hopes of adding to the counter. We did not add to the counter, but we did end up with 2 6s.
Okay. You seem to accidentally make the song too catchy, too fun to listen to, because rather than being annoyed or offended, Thoralda simply begins to dig in time with the music, even when you shift the time of the music. And so this is the situation that Ramnet and Lissa, you sort of step out of this bar at the heart of the chancel and into is this musically accompanied digging.
Oh, Thoralda, weren't you just talking about how chancels are an embodiment of the god themselves and getting upset about people digging around? And yeah, there's a bit of irony here.
A spray of dirt just misses your head by like 2 inches, and Thoralda, through gritted teeth, says, "Well, a divination told me that Tohil is below me, so I think that under the circumstances I am willing to be a little bit of a hypocrite, especially against the god who has kidnapped me."
Could be very far below, and I play a quite long descending line. When I get to the bottom, I begin untuning the low string to keep going lower.
Thoralda says, "Well, I expected that it would be so, and thus got an early start. I am, after all, like you, a demigod, and nothing says I will ever have to stop or slow down until I achieve my goal. So." And indeed, they have not stopped digging this whole time while they've been talking.
I make the ground beneath them furiously hard.
Roll Command Inspire to get the effect that you want. 1 plus a master die. Of course, normally I assess a difficulty here, but this is already hard ground,
Hey, Adam.
so pretty easy task.
Gonna be pair force.
All right.
Grammatically speaking,
Uh-huh.
what does it entail to murder a shovel?
I think this is one of those things where you might have a little bit of trouble getting it to stick because of the anthrocentric definition of murder and the requirement that murder have means, motive, and opportunity. Somebody would have to sort of be, in order for you to affect this, because I think you could. In order for you to affect this, I think you would have to have somebody who both wanted to and was willing to break the shovel. Or it's not actually a shovel being used. It's some smithing tool you're not familiar with. But there'd have to be somebody who wished it harm and was willing to act on it in a way that would be efficacious to break a shovel.
Okay.
I have a loot that can cause injury to physical bodies. It acts like a sling, basically.
In either case, the rate of the digging slows down tremendously as a result of Lys's miracle. And
Thank you for not asking me to describe how I'm making the ground hard.
The fact that the phrase "furiously hard" has never shown up in all of it. Remarkable.
Kind of unbelievable. Yeah.
It's taken a lot of self-control.
So Thoralda continues to chip away at the bottom here, determinedly kind of trying to ignore everything going on around them. And then, without actually sort of reappearing, you do hear Dosk's voice again, though it is relatively clear that Thoralda does not. And Dosk's voice says, right, so conversation with Fewa, things going on elsewhere have been kind of like they've been here with, like, you know, aggression from neighboring gods and stuff. So time is way more of the essence than I was hoping it was, as it turns out. If I could send you guys on your way to the God's Woods sooner rather than later, pause. What exactly is Thoralda doing up there?
Digging for Tokyo. I will try to think this in response rather than speak it aloud.
It works. And Dosk goes, right. Can I send them with you too?
Sure. They seem very eager to get out of here.
Especially if you
I say that out loud.
Convert Tokyo to your cause. I will continue to think.
Mm-hmm. Dusk goes, all right, well, I think that if you are able to focus enough and pray, I should be able to hear you, or at least get the gist of the message. Faye was going to try and kind of teach me the ins and outs of it.
Did you hear me earlier?
And
like the couple of times, I guess. I turned furiously red.
You blush furiously.
There's a brief silence, and Dusk goes, I mean, like, kinda. I was nice, honestly. Anyway, if you could, you know, try to get to the God's Woods and scope it out and see what you can find and maybe secure the place.
Can you sense other Nobilis up there?
As the GM, what do you mean by up there?
Just outside of the chancel. I don't know how. Norrington fell 100 feet, and my brain were just below.
Right.
At the bottom of a hole.
Yeah.
Dosk says, Well, if they come within the rough territory of what has usually been the Veils, then probably I'd be able to sense them, at least if they did anything miraculous. But that's sort of the area that this place coexists with. Otherwise, it would depend on me, like, kind of knowing where to focus my attention in order to catch it.
I will think.
That's harder.
So could you not tell that I'd gone up in the world until I mentioned it? Or was it
I didn't want to assume. There was something, but it was sort of squirrely.
Yeah, I seem to be able to go somewhat unnoticed.
Seems thematically appropriate.
I pick up at last on the thinking thing, and I think I don't know what happened to a patient or NB after Theron.
Oh. Yeah, yeah, I'll see what I can do. I don't want to make any promises, but I'd like to know too.
Yeah.
So I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
I have a try at playing a melody with the intention to communicate without having to say it. And I say, maybe they can join the team.
And Dusk seems to get the message and says, yeah, we'll see. I'm really hoping this Tohil thing works, because if it does, and I'm able to add an existing shard to my portfolio, it means that I don't have to worry about running out of things to give out. I can make the team bigger and bigger and bigger as we go, and have, just a coalition.
So Geralda's digging at the moment. Can you,
Correct.
This is thought at dusk. Just for grins, can you, make him dig in, a horizontal corkscrew?
A circle.
Dusk is like,
I mean, just change the direction of down for him so that he will not actually get to Tokyo before you're ready to, handle the matter.
I thought he was coming with us to the God's Woods.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that as well.
Going to send Thoralda. I was going to send Thoralda with y'all, but I think that I could do that. I don't know if I can do it right now. It's weird. It's hard to put into words, but making a chancel, and this one is only a few minutes old. It's a little like waking up in a new body that isn't made of body stuff.
I say melodically, it should be fine. We're honored that you'd send them with us, even though they'll almost certainly try to kill us.
That's possible, but I don't imagine they'd succeed.
Well, if they do, we'll be ready for it. And if they die, there will be a shard free.
True. We'll see what comes, and thank you. I know I haven't made it easy, and I hope that it works out.
Nothing about this is easy, Dusk, but
your choices were constrained at every turn, but you've explained, and we go forward.
And you've made the best choices with the cards that you were dealt. That's the most any of us can hope for.
Thanks. That means a lot, and good luck. See y'all soon. And with that, you feel the chancel sort of wisp away from you. And you find yourself standing in sort of an undifferentiated part of the grasslands of the Veils. And you hear the wind, you feel the breeze, you see the sky, all the things that were missing in Bor. And the last thing you hear before we end our session is Thoralda going, "Son of a bitch." And that's where we'll end our session.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Everybody could take 1 mortal XP for that session. And that'll conclude this session of Dice Punks. Thanks for joining us. I hope our players and listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll all join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found almost any place one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Twitter as @dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell. Say goodbye to the kind folks at home, players.
Thanks for listening. If there have to be demigods, it's better to be one, but do there?
Thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully it was not furiously hard to listen to the whole time. Or maybe it was. No judgment.
Thanks for listening, folks. And murders don't always have to be about vengeance.
And as the poet once said, do you want to know that it doesn't hurt me? Do you want to hear about the deal I'm making? And if I only could, I'd make a deal with God, and I'd get him to swap our places. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and stick around through the admin stuff for a Romnet murder. The songs in this episode, theme of the Dice Punks and its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Baron of Tempo in his element, Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who's appeared on the podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet where she goes by anything so's. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by Robin, the player behind Lissa and, for that matter, Mavia, the Nobilis of Fury. Rain and the one-world engine it runs on were created by Greg Stoltze, whose work can be found in a lot of places, but start at gregstoltze.com. Nobilis was created by Jenna Caterin Moran, who can be found alongside much of her other really intriguing work, both in and outside of tabletop role-playing, at afaransunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, well, that's reward enough on its own, really, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks after show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
There is a room in... No. The location is irrelevant. It's in a city, or a town. It happened, but the timing is also not relevant. There is a room. 2 windows, 1 door, all locked from the inside. No other exits. Not even ventilation. There is a room with a body in it, lying in a pool of blood. Nothing else. Not even furniture. Certainly not a weapon, or a murderer. I destroyed the evidence. The knife vanished. The motive evaporated. The killer ceased to be. But I could not undo the death. I am only in charge of murder.